know that some in our audience know the finer points of hockey.
The Chris Johnston Show.
We are your friends.
The biggest stories, bringing you inside the game.
What did you hear?
The Chris Johnston Show. Powered by Sports Interaction, Canada's sportsbook.
What is going on?
Here's Chris with your host, Julian McKenzie.
Part of the game.
Chris Johnston, back at it with another edition of the CJ Show. How are you feeling after the series that was between the Lightning and the Maple Leafs has come to an end? I want you to hold your fire and all the takes we have from that series. We have a whole segment dedicated to that and some of the other series. But I always have to check on the mentals. Always got to check on your well-being. How are you feeling, my bro?
Oh, mentally, I'm great. No issues there. Little sleep deprived, which anyone who came through that would be. But you know, it was a really fun series. The Leafs had one more goal than the Lightning, but one less win in a game, and it was really close, really fun. Curious to see how the Lightning, how much more they have in the tank after being pushed that way by Toronto, after what they've been through for 2 years, and what apparently doesn't look like a good injury for Braden Point. But credit to them for getting the job done in Game 7, and now we start deconstructing the deconstruction of the Maple Leafs core.
Okay. And we are going to get into the deconstruction of the deconstruction of the deconstruction. And of course, some of the other OTs and Game 7s that happened, which I kind of want to start off there before we get to the Leafs, because that Leafs game was in the midst of 5 amazing Game 7s throughout the weekend. I've never seen anything like it across a weekend, with the drama being as close as it was, the 2 OTs on the Sunday. We may have just gone through the best possible weekend in a playoff round in the NHL playoffs, at least that I've ever seen, maybe ever. Like 5 Game 7s across a weekend.
Yeah, 4 of them were 1-goal games, right? Obviously the 2 overtimes, and then the Edmonton game was 2-0 on Saturday night. It does highlight how hard it's going to be to win the Stanley Cup. We talked about this with our predictions. And I didn't tally up how well we did, but I don't think we did that great on our predictions. But
I did fine. I was 7-1. I don't know how you did. Actually, you know what? I wrote them down. I can tell how you did.
All right. But, I'm just saying that it's hard to slice these series in a lot of ways. I saw Brad Marchand had a quote after Boston lost Game 7, and it was to the effect of, we really felt like if we could beat Carolina, like they were such a big team for us, that we would have, went on a long run. I think the feeling was similar for the Leafs. They felt like if they could get by the Lightning, they would have went on a long run. I mean, this is a year in the East, everyone feels like they should win. And why not? 8 teams had 100-point plus. 8 teams had great seasons, objectively great seasons. And you see that many series go right to Game 7, and are decided by 1 goal. I mean, you're literally talking about the finest of margins between winning and losing. And I think that's going to continue now. The problem is, as the playoffs go on, things like injuries and that do change the way the games go. I mean, if Tampa doesn't have Braden Point, it's a much different series with Panthers than if they do, because I just think he's that much of a great playoff performer. But yeah, it was awesome, enjoyment, excitement, good for the league. And I have no idea who's going to win the cup, but I do know the CJ Show still has a Florida Panthers win the cup in play betting slip.
Yes, that is true. We have to keep that in mind. Of all the Game 7s outside of the Leafs and Lightning one, was there one that you had to watch? And if the answer is I had to recover and sleep throughout the weekend, that is a totally acceptable answer considering the work you went through.
Well, I didn't get to watch all of Edmonton, LA, because I was still working, the way the timing worked. But I did see the last, half of the game. That was one I was really curious about. I feel like the Oilers had to win their series more than almost any other team. I can hear producer Nick yelling through the screen, even though he's muted, that the Leafs had to win their series more than any other team. But I do think with playing the Kings and everything that's gone on in Edmonton, that was a crucial game for them. So that one I was very curious about. And then obviously when Edmonton did win, then the focus goes, can there actually be a ballot of Alberta? And so then I was curious if the Flames could get through, because the Flames it actually reminds me a bit of Leafs Habs last year. I mean, the Flames had such a great regular season. There was a huge difference in the years that Calgary and Dallas had. And yet Jake Oettinger and the way the Stars play, I mean, they pushed them right to the limit. And, Johnny Gaudreau gets the job done. So those are the other ones I was curious about. But let's face it, you could play Game 7, any two teams. I think it's compelling. How about the Rangers coming back and winning that series with Pittsburgh?
Incredible.
Didn't look like that was going to happen, 6 days ago. Even Carolina, Boston, I picked Boston in that series, but ended up being a full homer series with all the home teams winning. Was watching that one at the rink before Game 7 in Toronto. So, you try to catch as much of a Game 7 as you can. And, this round I'm not out on the road, which is actually might sound like a bad thing. I think it's going to be a good thing because I'll be in a much better vantage point to really watch what's going on and start to get a better feel for which team's going to come out and get their hands on Stanley.
Just for consistency's sake, with regards to our predictions, you are even because you picked Leafs, Florida, Pittsburgh, Boston, Minnesota, Edmonton, Colorado, and Calgary. 4 of those were correct. 4 of those were incorrect. We're not going to get too much into if we got the games correct and all that, but you at least have a 500 record after the first round.
Yeah. I don't think I did well in the games though. Like I picked the Flames, but I picked them in 5, for example.
I picked the Flames like in four. So yeah, we both kind of, we didn't do as well as we would have liked with the Calgary Flames series.
Right. But I wouldn't wear it with any pride. And this isn't to chip at you, Julian. If I went 8-0, I'd still be like, I'm still blindly guessing in a lot of cases. Like there wasn't too many of those series I felt really compelled against. Like when I picked the Leafs in 7, really what I'm saying is I think this is so close and the Leafs play the last game on home ice and I assume they're going to win it, or I think they can win it. And they could have won it, but they didn't. So, that's how history goes. But I'm just saying, like, I wouldn't feel like I'm the smartest guy in the world had I got that right, or in this case, I got it wrong, but it wasn't as though I was such a miss that I have to hand in my press badge and never go back.
The only series I got wrong was the Minnesota-St. Louis series, which I still kind of take an L because I believed very much in the Minnesota Wild. So I can't really feel all that high and mighty anyway. And I don't want to feel high and mighty. It's the playoffs. Like I wish some of the other series might have gone another way. We would have had more chaos, but that's okay. Who cares? Who cares? Like, plus I didn't even put money on these picks anyway. If I had put money on these picks, then I'd be feeling really happy. But I'm just like, okay, all right, I did it. I got 7 right and 1 wrong. But that's the beauty of the playoffs. The series go one way, some of them go another way. I'll say this much, though. The Rangers-Pittsburgh series, we mentioned how that series went. I believe the NHL PR account put out a tweet saying the Rangers had consecutive comeback wins in each of those wins they got in order to get to Game 7 and eventually leading to a win. Of all the teams.
Yeah, and in Game 7, they're down 3-2 in the third period.
That's it. Like, I can't believe the Rangers came back and won that series the way that they did. I can't believe that happened. I really thought the Penguins were going to win.
Because the one takeaway I have across a lot of Game 7s that I've watched, it's really hard to come back in those games. Like, I'd actually like to see the numbers on teams scoring first, winning Game 7 versus other games. I know that it's always advantageous to score first because scoring is what wins you the game, and the quicker you can start doing that, the better. But I feel like those games tend to be played in such a tight manner that the team that gets ahead just doesn't often surrender that lead and lose. And so it's hard to do it. At least they did have it on home ice. They're playing Tristan Jarry, who hadn't played in a while. So maybe that helped. But look, still an overtime game. Could have gone either way. And credit to the Rangers for sticking with it and moving on. I didn't see that at the start of the year. I'll tell you that much. I didn't know. And there's been a few people in my DM saying we don't talk enough the Rangers and it's true. Throughout this year, we didn't. I didn't see them being this good this soon, and attributed a lot to the goaltender, and obviously he deserves a lot. But that's a good Pittsburgh team. They beat. Pittsburgh played well down the stretch, got up in the series, and just couldn't close it out. Yeah,
that's a really good Rangers team on that side, with Panarin obviously getting the OT winner, but Adam Fox and Norris candidate pretty much every year for the next decade, as far as I'm concerned. And Zibanejad and all those guys, they have really good pieces on that team. They're ahead of schedule, as far as I'm concerned, for where a lot of people might have put them as a team in development. Remember, they had that rebuild start from a couple years ago, and Now they're already in the second
round. Manager a year ago. I mean, usually when that happens, and it's not to say, obviously, Jeff Gorton, a lot of the players playing on the ice are responsible, with the responsibility of Jeff Gorton and his management staff for getting them because they've been there for more than a year. But, usually when you see a team change its GM, you're not expecting that quick of a rise because, it takes time to drag a team up. So really interesting the way that's played out there. And now we see if they can handle Carolina. I mean, the way Boston was talking about Carolina is we should be talking about them going to the Cup final from the East. So I'm looking forward to see that one.
Absolutely. Also, any love for Jake Oettinger and the way that he played in that Dallas Calgary Game 7? One of the most scintillating goaltending performances ever done in the Stanley Cup playoffs. He was incredible in that Game 7. Yeah,
we'll give him a rare Monday stick tap because I'm sure it feels awful to lose, but I mean, he did everything he could to try to drag the Stars into round 2, and played great. Young player, he's been around their team a little bit, but hasn't, had a ton of NHL experience and made a pretty big statement, I would say, here in the last 2 weeks.
You touched off on it with regards to you not traveling on the road for second round. So can you go into more detail on how you're going to go about covering some of the rest of these series or what you might be doing or anything like that?
Well, I don't have a full picture of it just yet, but, we're recording this on Monday. Tuesday, the Maple Leafs do their end of season media availability. So I'll be there doing that, covering that. And truthfully, that'll probably produce a few days worth of content. For those that maybe aren't familiar, once a team loses in the playoffs, they gather and they're available to the media. Often it's in the case of the Leafs, it'll be President Brendan Shanahan and Kyle Dubas and Sheldon Keefe will speak, and anywhere from 6 to 8 to 10 to 12 players. I don't know. They haven't given us an exact breadth of what to expect, but it's a lot of different interviews and there's a lot of different talking points. And so I would imagine I'll spend maybe the rest of the week, honestly, just trying to work through what's said there, look ahead to, how the Maple Leafs, I mean, it's probably one of the most, it's not just because it's the Leafs and it's Toronto, given 6 straight years that they've had pretty damn good regular season teams that haven't gotten over the hump. And some of the contractual things that are coming, Julian, which we can get into I don't know how deep you want to go on this, but there's a lot to consider with where this team goes next. And so I think most of this week from a professional standpoint will be me writing about that for North Star Bet and Toronto Star. And then, I'll be watching all the other games and I guess I'll just have to see where it goes from there. I would think I'll be back on the road for the Stanley Cup final, but this will be hard for me to say in public, but for all the years I've been out and did all 4 rounds, and it was a lot of years and it's a lot of time away from home, I'm not that upset about just taking a step back, eating some good food, not being on the road so much, but still following the league, covering the league, working the phones and all that, because you look at my watch, it's already May 16th, there's the games to cover and the playoffs to talk about, but we're not that far away from the news season, I would call it. The lead up to the draft, the trades that happen. Obviously, there's still a number of coaching positions that haven't been filled. There's a lot of things to get my head around that, basically all I did is cover a playoff series wire to wire. So I got to get caught up on that. So that's a long-winded answer to your short question, but it's not as though I'm going to the cottage and putting the gone fishing sign up, but it's going to be a little different the next month than it was the last 2 weeks.
I gotta say, I bet you can't wait to go up to the cottage and put up the gone fishing sign. That being said, you mentioned there are a lot of content from that Leaf series. It's almost like you might have to do 2 podcasts to kind of go into it, but we only have the one on the Thursday, but are you going to go on another podcast this week and talk about the Leafs? Or
yeah, it's kind of a tradition that started by accident. Adam and Steve and Jesse would probably know the year. It was one of the Boston losses, so either 2018 or 2019. And actually, it was that very day that the Leafs did their end of season availability, and that's a long day, man. It can be like 5 hours of interviews, and it's right after the playoff series. It's just everyone's been through the meat grinder bit. And then I, at that time I was working at Sportsnet. I'm sure I had to do some TV and stuff. And then I remember racing over to the studio and joining those guys. And we just went in on every piece of minutia on what the Leafs might do. And I think honestly, at the time, I probably said a little too much. Like I just didn't have the filter up. And the episode went kind of bananas and, whatever. I mean, I think I said things like they're going to trade Nazem Kadri this offseason, and they did. So like, it wasn't as though, but I was not totally responsible in how I presented the information. It wasn't on purpose. It was just, I was so tired. And so now it's become a tradition that I go there after the garbage bag day. But I'm not sure there'll be quite as many fireworks this year because I've learned my lesson, but it's going to be fun. And what I love about those guys is literally that we're not just talking about the high level stuff. They're going to want to know about Ilya Mikheyev or, Ilya Lyubushkin, name a player that, some of the depth players the Leafs have with their contracts expiring. They're going to want to get into it all. And so we're going to break it down on Wednesday. All
right. That you heard it here first, everybody. Wednesday's episode, CJ returns to the SDP. Is that going to be your first time back on the SDP since the announcement?
Yes. That was in September. I went over to Adam's basement. Can't remember what day in September, and we announced the show for the first time. You and I were back in his basement, October, November? Well, I'm returning to the studio. I'm expecting to get a nice bubbly served up. And I'm ready to rock on whatever they want to talk about with the Leafs.
Well, now that you're going to be grounded in Toronto for the next little while, I might have to make an appearance in Toronto myself and go back to Adam's basement. That was a really fun time.
It was great. It was really good. And I'm excited to see the guys. I haven't seen them too much either, obviously. So.
All right. It is time for David Bastel from Sports Interaction. As always, this is a 19+ app, Sports Interaction. We ask that you play responsibly and that there is a link to Responsible Gaming Strategies. There is a link to Responsible Gaming Strategies in the description of this show. Welcome to You Can Bet That with David Bastel. Remember, hit up sportsinteraction.com/SDPN for all of your gaming needs. David, we have reached the second round of the Stanley Cup playoffs, which means it's time to look at odds for each of these series. How excited are you for the second round of the playoffs? Just before we get going here.
Extremely excited, being a Western Canadian kid, to see the Battle of Alberta once again. I know, being a Jets fan and still a Jets fan to this day, that was usually meaning that the Jets were probably crushed by one of those Alberta teams in the first round. But it's some of the most entertaining hockey, and my Flames ticket is still alive, so that's the good part.
That's good. Speaking of the Flames, -200 against the Oilers at +160. You making that bet on the Flames?
You know what? I'm going to stick to my Stanley Cup future just because it's a little better odds on it right now. But I am saying the Flames do win this. I think they win this, maybe even less than 7 games. What about you, CJ? Battle of Alberta, something we're very familiar with, but we haven't seen in quite some time.
I got Edmonton on the upset here. I like what we're seeing out of the goaltending and Connor McDavid. That was like a god level first round.
Was it ever?
So I'm thinking the Oilers for an upset here.
Okay, I'm going to take Calgary and stay consistent with that one. Let's go to Carolina and the New York Rangers. Don't sleep on that series. I think we can get some good stuff out of that. But the New York Rangers at +170, Carolina at -227. I like the Canes in this one. What about you, David?
Yeah, I like the Canes as well. I wish I had a more, consistent type of goaltender, because they seem to be using everybody and their number one isn't quite there yet. I don't know the status of Freddie for this one, but man, Carolina, the way they shut down defensively against teams, I think that's a recipe to success.
Yeah, and I like their experience level too. They've been in a lot of series the last couple of years. I think the Hurricanes get to the conference final.
Yeah, I think maybe in my initial bracket, because we got asked by the SDPN to come up with some brackets for what we think is going to happen, I might have picked the Rangers to go to the conference final. So I think in order to be consistent, while I do like the Canes, and you are allowed to switch, for the purpose of this, I will defer back to my initial prediction and I will pick the Rangers at 170. How about that? We can't all just pick the same teams here. I'm willing to pick the Rangers for this one. What about the Florida Panthers and the Tampa Bay Lightning? There is the Battle of Alberta, but there is the Battle of Florida. Florida favored, funny enough, the Panthers to win that series, while the Lightning, coming off a big series win over the Leafs, at +121. What do you think about that?
You know what? Because of the plus money, I like Tampa Bay in this situation, to to be the man, you got to beat the man, right? And right now, Tampa Bay, they're the man, and I think they might have some sort of edge here on this rivalry right now. And you know what? Plus money makes me want to say Lightning continue to win.
I'm sticking with our ticket, Julian. February 6th, we got the Panthers to win the cup at a future plus 600. The CJ show is going to let it ride, so I think the Panthers are going to keep playing.
Yeah, man. I can't wait for that steak dinner if that ticket cashes out. You know what I'm saying? Colorado and St. Louis to round off here. Colorado minus 400 up on the St. Louis Blues at plus 300. The numbers here. Jeez.
It's basically telling us, guys, that this series is pretty much over, which is, I think it's kind of silly to tell you the honest truth. I think St. Louis will fall, but don't be surprised if they grab a couple games in this series and make it a series myself. I think Colorado will win this, but you know what? 6 or 7 games. This isn't going to be what they did in the first round.
No, and you wonder about the layoff. You know, that doesn't always work in a team's favor to sort of get out of the rhythm. But, you know, I have to pick the Avalanche to win the series. But if you're placing a bet, I mean, who knows? There's a lot of different ways you might look at those lines. Yeah,
St. Louis was able to grit themselves out of that series against Minnesota. They have last year's first round in mind. I believe they were swept against the Colorado Avalanche. They do not want a repeat of that against the Avs this year. I'm picking Colorado in that series. Florida and Tampa looking like a bit of a toss-up. I didn't necessarily put a prediction on that one yet, but that one is looking particularly tight. David, thank you as always for the You Can Bet That segment. Thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget to check out sportsinteraction.com/SDPN for all the best odds before game, in game, and the best props. Again, sportsinteraction.com/SDPN. David, thank you.
Cheers.
Okay, Siege, it's time to talk about that Leaf series. It's time to talk about how that went down. Why did the Leafs lose this series? They did just about everything they could to win that series. They played well. They won games convincingly. They came back and won a game, and they still lost. Why are the Leafs in this position?
Well, Tampa won the series. I don't see it as much as the Leafs losing the series. And I understand, look, at the emotional reaction a fan will have to that series, I totally get. I'm not telling any fan how to think about his team or her team. But I do think if you're looking a little bit more strategically, if you're in a position of management, you know, I think you look at that series, and to me, it wipes the stench away from what happened against Montreal and Columbus. You know, they played a much better opponent, and they played much, much better. Every single one of their stars showed up to a varying degree. You know, even Jack Campbell held his own with Andrei Vasilevsky. That was the Leafs' best defensive core of the teams they've had these last 5 or 6 years. And I think there's a lot of validation in that series, even though no one wants to hear that. I get it. It's win or lose in the playoffs, blah, 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 blah. Well, that wasn't just any team the Leafs played in the playoffs. And frankly, they were one bounce, one change call, one more power play converted. I mean, that might sting them a little bit. I mean, they only had one power play chance in game 6 and 2 in game 7. But if they get one more power play goal at either of those games, they probably play on. If they score an opportunity in game 6 in overtime, they play on. They were that close. And so I think that this actually sort of puts some more belief in the process, maybe call it. Now, for a bunch of reasons, they can't just run the core back forever and ever and ever. But I do think that series gives you a reason to do it for one more year. And then you got some big decisions that are not too far on the horizon.
But it's so much easier to stomach a loss like that if it's not, you know, in front of 4 or 5 other opening round series losses in the playoffs. Let's be real.
Sure. Well, if the Leafs close out Montreal ahead 3-1 last May, and even if they fell the next round in Winnipeg, which probably wouldn't happen, but, you know, let's just play this hypothetical game. I think that you view this Lightning series totally differently, because that series just becomes all about, like, the Leafs finally have to win a playoff series. You know, again, from the fan standpoint, feel what you're going to feel. Let it all out. Rage on Twitter. I get it. But I actually think from a pure, like, what do they do next? I think those guys showed enough to make you believe in giving it back another season. I mean, it's not going to be the same team. You know, Jack Campbell's a UFA. Peter Mrazek's contract is a weight around their necks. You know, something's going to be done on goaltending one way or another. That's going to look different. You know, they have depth players that are, probably not going to be able to be re-signed. Ilya Mikheyev is an obvious one. Just I think he's probably priced himself out of the city. It's not a they don't want him or he doesn't want to be there situation. I wonder about what they do with the blue line. You have Rasmus Sandin and Timothy Liljegren. I think you have to clear space to be sure that they're in your top 6 next year. It's time for that. They both need new contracts too themselves. And so, look, there's going to be some reshuffling of the pieces. But I don't know, unless you can make a really good hockey trade involving, say, someone like William Nylander. I don't think it's a case that you have to get rid of someone like him just to make that big change. I don't think you have to, fire a head coach who just coached the team to 54 wins at 115 points and had his team one shot away in Game 6 and Game 7 from moving on. I understand the change for change sake, folks. Like they're frustrated. They want an answer, right? Everybody wants an answer. They want a solution. I think sometimes the solution is really doubling down on what you have, and they're going to have to make some at minimum changes around the fringes. The goaltending is a huge question point. And then really, and there's not a lot of talk yet about this in Toronto, but I think this is all about how can we make sure Auston Matthews wants to sign a contract extension here at the earliest opportunity. And I think that has to begin basically right now. I mean, he can't sign that deal, Julian, until July 1st, 2023. That's in the rules. So there's 13 months before that can even happen. But I think everything that happens from, decision-wise around that organization has to be done with in mind, how do we make it so that when that day comes in 13 months, you're having a big press conference and signing him to a major deal that, if he signs an extension, he's going to finish as the leader in basically every important franchise record book. I mean, it's only a question of, does he play here long enough? It's not a question of his talent or his ability. And so, this is going to be a fascinating offseason and then, subsequently a year until that point.
By the way, you did write about the Auston Matthews situation you are bringing up here. Every offseason move the Leafs make will be about Auston Matthews. The stakes are high. That is in the Toronto Star. What do the Leafs have to do, essentially, I guess, to appease Auston Matthews and ensure that, they don't find themselves in a position where come July 1st, 2023, he doesn't sign?
Well, this guy wants to win. He's at the point, he's got his second Rocket Richard trophy now. He, in a month's time, he might have a Hart trophy. He might have a Ted Lindsay award in his cabinet. Even if he doesn't win those, I mean, he's got the Calder trophy from his rookie season. He's done enough individual award winning. He wants to win. He wants to be playing the games in late May and June and have a chance to win the Stanley Cup. And so I think first and foremost, when he signs that next contract, wherever it is, he's going to be signing in a place he believes he's got a great chance to win. And so, I think how you extrapolate that from a Leaf standpoint is that's great because his goals align exactly with what the Maple Leafs want to do, right? As an organization, if he was signed for 7 more years as of right now, they'd be doing everything they can this summer to try to build a team to win. Like they are clearly in an all-in mode. There's no thinking about a rebuild. There's no future considerations here. Like the future is next season. How do you make every move possible to try to win a championship? And so, his goals are aligned with the organization that way. I know there's all this speculation like, oh, he wants to go home and play in Arizona and all that stuff. I think you can completely toss that out the window myself. The Coyotes arena situation is still unresolved. They're going to play on a college campus for next 3 or 4 years, maybe longer. I don't see that being a fit for someone like Auston Matthews. So this won't be a Tavares or Stamkos like courting where you're trying to pull out the heartstrings and play in a home place. And so, where does he want to play? He wants to play somewhere that he can show his best, where he can be his best, where he can win a cup, where he can live a good life. And I think Toronto does tick all those boxes. The question is, how is he going to be feeling a year from now about the direction of the organization? They might have to take a step back. I mean, this is a flat cap world, right? This is the challenge. It's a huge challenge. John Tavares is going to make $11 million again next year. Well, he's going to be another year older. And it's not to say there'll be a decline. I mean, Steven Stamkos just came off his best year in the NHL, and he's a year older than John Tavares. I mean, the point is it's possible. It's just when you look at what happens in sports in general, it's very difficult for athletes to find another gear or to even maintain a certain level once they get into their 30s. And so the Leafs are once again going to be operating in a tight cap situation, and they have to give him the feeling, I believe, that they can win a cup. And who knows, maybe that next year at this time, maybe they're in a Stanley Cup final and all of this is rather moot and it's just a foregone conclusion. I mean, that's what makes it intriguing. At this point in time, no one can say with any certainty if Auston Matthews will re-sign with the Leafs. That includes him. That includes team management. I don't think it's a case at all. I should be very clear on this, that he's looking to leave or anything like that. But, what happens here matters. And if the organization or the team goes in the wrong direction next year, I mean, that's going to have some implications. And I don't think anyone really wants to consider them right now. But, it felt like a time the Leafs window stretched out forever, right? They had these young players with all this skill. And we've reached the moment where it no longer stretches out forever. And it's about getting the job done.
I have a hard time wrapping my brain around Auston Matthews playing in a much different uniform. And if the Leafs find a way to mess that up, that would be the biggest failure in franchise history, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, especially if they don't win a playoff series even. I mean,
God,
they more or less punted a season to have the best draft lottery odds. They won that lottery. They won the player. He scored 4 goals in his first NHL game. He scored more goals per game from the moment he entered the NHL than any other player in the league. He plays center. Keep in mind, not a lot of centers are goal scorers. A lot of the best goal scorers tend to be wingers that get the puck distributed to them. I mean, he truly does things that other players don't do, which again is a different conversation. It is the best in the league. I mean, what we just saw from Connor McDavid in round 1, he's without question one of the best in the league, and there's no one else to replace him. Like, there's not even a conversation to be had there. And so, he gave the organization a reason for hope, and that hope is slowly, time is sucking that hope out of the jar a little bit. And you even heard this in Sheldon Keefe's remarks right after the Game 7 loss. Like, he's like, "Yeah, we earned respect, but this is a winning business. We've got to find a way to do that." Like, I don't think I'm saying anything here the organization doesn't deeply, deeply understand. I mean, the stakes on the next season in Toronto are so high. I mean, so much higher than even this last year. I know we framed it a certain way, that the core is on trial. Now it's not even about, now I'm like all for, of course, if you think you can trade one of those other players, like, you have to look at it. But to me, it's not about removing them. It's only about making a hockey trade. If you think there's something that can alter the dynamic, I don't think you're doing it because those guys can't get it done. You would only be looking at it if you think you can get better in a certain way. Maybe you can trade for a pretty darn good player, but who makes $1 million or $2 million less, and you can do something with that $2 million to add to the team. I mean, that's the only reason you're looking at it now, in my view. But everything has to be on the table because, you just can't be in a position where Auston Matthews doesn't want to sign that deal July 1st, 2023. The other part of this, Julian, not to go too deep CBA on you, is his no movement clause kicks in on July 1st, 2023. So he can't sign a contract before that date. And as of that date, he's got a full no movement clause. So he by the rights in his contract, doesn't really have to do anything. He could just sit and wait and play out 2 years, not be worried about being moved, and then go straight to free agency. And again, I don't think that's probably how it's going to play out, because can you imagine a season in Toronto where he's on an expiring contract? Like, how that would play out from a media standpoint, the talk around him, like, it happened with Steven Stamkos in Tampa. With respect to the Tampa media, my friends down there, it's not the same firestorm, right? John Tavares played out the final year of his deal in Long Island. Wasn't quite the same firestorm. I think it would be such a distraction. It wouldn't be good for either the player or the team. And so really it's 13 to 14 months from now when then this is going to be decided one way or another, and they have to figure out what's happening. And so it sets up as a rather big 13 to 14 months for the organization and for Auston.
I'm just picturing like those, say there's just Discord, shout out Discord, by the way. There's like problems between the team and Auston Matthews. And like every week people are asking, what's going to happen? Is he going to stay? Is he going to resign? Like every episode, like we'd have to do like an Auston Matthews vibe check every episode we do of the CJ show. If that it's a peak the case,
we'd be adding a game over Auston Matthews. And it's just like after every Leafs game, they just talk for an hour about what it may mean or not mean for his future with the organization.
And people would watch that. People would genuinely watch a game over Auston Matthews if it got to that point.
People have been watching Steve Dangle scream into a webcam for 15 years. Of course, people would watch that.
Oh my God. I'll say this though. While I still have a hard time picturing him leaving Toronto, like if I'm the Rangers, depending on where I'm at in my progression as a team, I'm looking at it, Chicago, Los Angeles, some of the bigger media markets in the States. Like I get why you don't want it to be a distraction if you're Auston Matthews, but knowing the talent that you have and the box office potential that you have, I feel like you kind of have to listen to some of these offers.
Maybe. I don't think he wants to leave though. Like that, this isn't, I don't want to put out the wrong tone here. It's more that this is just urgent because a big moment is arriving. Like, I don't get the sense at all this is a guy looking to leave. I think he loves Toronto. I think he understands that he's on probably the biggest stage in the sport in terms of media coverage and, like the fan support the team gets and, a media market. He can go live still, wherever he wants in the offseason, even after a successful season for a few months. Like that, I don't think that there's a guy looking to get out, but he wants to have the greatest career possible. I mean, we're watching someone who's going to go in the Hockey Hall of Fame one day. And there's only so many players under the age of 25. You can say that with certainty. I'm actually at the point with him. I think you can say it with certainty. And so this is just about having a Hall of Fame career. Like what do these guys want to do? Right. Like Tom Brady collected rings. Like, I don't think Tom Brady's going to be remembered for his MVP awards. Like, yeah, he won a few, but like Tom Brady's remembered because he needs like two hands to put all those rings on.
He's like Thanos.
What's that?
He's like Thanos.
Exactly. Yeah. And so Auston, let's put in hockey. I don't know if anyone is going to need two hands. I mean, not since the Canadiens players in the 70s or whatever for all the rings, but like, it's about chasing championships at this point. I think he's done all he needs to do from an individual level. I don't even think it's important that he chases 60 goals again next year. Honestly, like the fact he's done it once, if he has to sacrifice a few goals to help team goals, if he, whatever it is, I think really it's this, he's getting to the stage of his career. It's all about the cup. And so Toronto has to keep giving him a feeling that if he signs, whatever it ends up being 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years extension, that he's going to have a chance to win a cup each of those seasons.
You mentioned Sheldon Keefe earlier. I want to get into some of the post Game 7 reactions, some of the commentary, some of the quotes that came out from it. What were some of the biggest takeaways from that post-game media availability that stood out to you?
I think just how emotional everyone was. That's not so much Sheldon Keefe. He was, he doesn't show the emotions too much, but the players were just destroyed. I mean, probably for the reasons that I'm saying we should look at, we should give them credit for how well they played. They know how well they played, right? Like they know that they left it out there and it wasn't enough. And so that's got to be a difficult feeling. I do think it will be a source of motivation though, once the immediate emotions wear off and they get into their off seasons and they start thinking about where they can go. Like I think it's going to put them on more of a mission. I think that they remove some doubts. I think that honestly, and people might take issue with this, I think they even slayed some of their own mental demons in that series, frankly, because they showed up and they were right there. And again, I respect my colleague Pierre LeBrun, but he's like, no consolation prizes in the playoffs, no asterisks, this and that. I actually think that's a little bit bogus. I think in your life, even when you don't maybe achieve what you want, but you're right there. Like, I think that is different. Like, there's no way this team is walking away, those individual players going like, can we do this anymore? Like, I don't even think there's like that. Can we? I think that they have a new level of belief, frankly. And so that's what stood out to me in the immediate aftermath of the loss, is just how destroyed they were. But I think it's going to be real fuel now. Because, with respect to the Canadiens of last year, like they got the job done and the Leafs should have won that series. Like I've had some private conversations with Leafs players that acknowledge that they like choked that away. Like one of them said the team they were this year, they weren't all that different last year and we lost to them. And this year they finished, and won the first overall draft pick. And so that's a different series loss than this against the two-time defending champs who knows, might be three-time defending champs. I mean, John Cooper gave a speech. We want to talk about speeches. He gave a speech before Game 7 that had me wanting to run through a wall. And he was asked about, is it okay if you lose Game 7 tonight just because you won the last two cups? Like, it's all upside for you, right? He's like, that's BS. He's like, we're standing here on the cusp of greatness. Why wouldn't we charge through that door? And I was just like, wow, my man. I think that's what John Cooper's got to be his biggest strength, is just the way he pushes buttons, is how smart he is, the motivational tools he uses. And I do think it matters. It's not that players need motivation, but I think sometimes in the moment you need to focus on something because there's so much going on, right? And especially in the playoffs, I think it's all about finding the right focus, the right place to harness your energy, the right place to put your intention for success. And I think he's second to none in his profession at finding that. And so, yeah, losing to that team is all I'm saying, to circle it back to the Leafs. I just don't think there's any shame in it. The shame is that they lost to teams they shouldn't have in the past, and it all gets lumped together. But I do think I watched that series and I'm like, you know what? I don't think we have to talk about Montreal and Columbus anymore because we saw something from that team that made you think like, okay, now they're playing for real when it matters.
I can understand that line of thinking, but this is still a team with that core in place that lost to Columbus, that lost to Montreal, that lost to Boston. Well, some of those players lost to Boston. Like, they have all those opening round losses. Like, if we're talking about the Leafs and Lightning series as a conference final series, man, we'd be looking at the Leafs so much differently. And that played out like a series you could easily see in a conference final. Like, I don't know how you look at the Leafs right now, and I understand why people are on team run it back and all that, but I don't understand how you look at the series that happened with the Leafs and Lightning and you don't take into consideration everything that happened before and not think, okay, something has to change. It doesn't have to be a massive, drastic change, but could you sell the idea that like you can more or less bring back everyone as is? Like, man, I'm glad I'm not in a position to be paid to deal with that job, but like, if that's a really interesting thing to do if you're Kyle Dubas and Brendan Shanahan.
But what are you talking about? Like who are you stripping from them? Like, if anything, they haven't scored enough in the playoffs as a team. So like, everyone's solution is trade one of the big guys. Well, look at the Leafs scoring leaders in the series. All the big guys were their scoring leaders. So if you're trading one of them, how are you replacing that offense? And, you know, I'm not throwing third liners under the bus here. Like, I get it. Like, those guys get paid the money. They're the ones that have to pull you through a series. But I just don't see how they get better by trading one of those players. Again, if you're trading William Nylander for someone who can replace his offense, but maybe just gives you a slightly different element while doing so, okay, you do that. But like, let's go around the league. Like, who is that guy? Who is stepping up and making that trade? And to me, if you're the Leafs, you're not trading William Nylander for a futures package. Like, how does that help anything? Like, yeah, you get his $6 million in cap space, but guess what? William Nylander is better than a $6 million player. He brings positive value objectively. You had an 80-point season. How many guys get 80 points that are making $6 million? There's not very many. He might be one. I haven't even looked at that. But the point is that, okay, not maybe a perfect player. You can show me this clip of him, you know, ducking a hit in a game his team's losing 3-0. But you need to score goals to win. And so, oddly, I think their challenge is finding ways to score more goals. And so how do you do that with no cap space? I mean, it's a difficult challenge, but I just think there's a huge danger if you're just trading one of the guys who produces offense on this team and think it's going to get better. Like, the Leafs aren't going to grit their way to a cup in 2-1 games. They need to outscore their opponents, and they need to find a way to do that. They need to hope, frankly, too. Look, like any other team, they got a few prospects. They got to hope one or two of those guys maybe is ready to come up and play a role. They have to hope that Michael Bunting, who had a productive season, he's injured during the playoffs. I think that's one of those things. Maybe he could have scored one more goal in a different. I mean, look, when you lose, you can go down all these rabbit holes. But I just don't see how the path to winning is paved by giving away one of the players who scores a lot. I think that they got to find lots of ways around the margins to get a few more goals when it comes to playoff time. But I don't want to say they're stuck with it. I just think they're stuck with it if they want to keep competing for the Stanley Cup. I mean, they could trade all those players because they're positive value on their contracts. But you trade them, you're getting worse in the short term, and that's not what they want to do.
Nope. It does sound like your team run it back in this case, but you do make good arguments. Also, yeah. William Nylander.
Okay, look, I'm
those last two series. Go ahead.
I'm team run it back, but I'm also saying, like, yes, if you can trade William Nylander for someone who does similar to what he does production-wise, you got to look at it. I don't know that trade's out there. Like Pierre-Luc Dubois and Patrick Laine, like that kind of lined up because it was two teams that it solved the problem for both teams, so to speak, or it was a clear solution for both teams. I don't even know who's come out ahead in that one. That one's almost been a wash, but like, that's the kind of, I almost see it. If you're trading Nylander, it's probably a 1-for-1. And You just got to tell me who that one is, and then we can evaluate the scenarios about whether the Leafs should do it or not. I don't see who it realistically could be, will be, should be. And so, I'm sure Kyle Dubas will have those conversations with other teams. He's going to gauge to see what's out there. But I just won't surprise me if we get to the draft and there's no significant trade that's happened, and the core four are still the core four.
What about Sheldon Keefe? Because you can make the argument the easiest change the Leafs could do if they wanted to do that would be to let go of Sheldon Keefe and maybe get someone like Barry Trotz, for example, who's out there. Like, what about that idea?
Well, who's making that call? I'd be surprised. I don't see Kyle Dubas doing that. I mean, Sheldon Keefe has been his guy. The team's gotten better, won more games. I don't see him going down that road. I guess there's a world where ownership or something exerts that kind of pressure. Maybe that happens. I mean, it can't be entirely ruled out. The Leafs make a lot of money, but they could have made a lot more money if they won a few playoff rounds during this stretch. So, everybody's got a boss, and sometimes you got to do things your boss wants you to do. So I suppose it's possible. I don't think it's likely. I really don't. If they didn't make that change after last year's playoffs, I don't see how you're making it after this year's playoffs. That's kind of my view. If you believed in him then, and you believe in the sort of core players, I think you're probably staying put there. But Sheldon Keefe is under a microscope now too. I mean, because the odds, the stakes are so high, as I put it, you can't rule out some change coming down the road, but I don't think it's now.
Is there anything else about the Leafs from the last few days that you want to mention that I didn't ask you?
No, I think the Campbell story is going to be interesting. I'm not sure he's back. He played really well in that series, though. Like, I know the numbers are going to be the numbers. There's a lot of goals scored in that series. There's a lot of specialty teams in the first 5 games, which contributed to that somewhat. But I thought that Campbell really held up his end of the bargain. I thought he put them in a position to win. In fact, I talked to someone on the team that he thought Game 7 was the best he'd ever seen him play. This is from one of his teammates. So, it wouldn't be that it's placing the series loss on Jack Campbell, but he is a free agent, and I think that they got to look at what they can do at that position. They already let Frederik Andersen walk last year. The Mrazek thing hasn't worked out. They're going to have to try to address that in some way. So I could see completely new goaltending at the NHL level in place, or I guess maybe the backup is one of, Eric Shalgren or Joseph Wall, a guy who's been in the organization and played some games. So that's something I'll be watching. But really until Tuesday and we see these avails, we see that the tone that especially Brendan Shanahan sets, in fact, it's not confirmed he's speaking at this point. They haven't told us that, but he's spoken in past situations like this. I'll be curious to see what he says. And it's going to be a fascinating offseason here. That much I'll tell you. But, that's kind of the extent of my thoughts still in the aftermath of this thing, and with no one having put a bow on how they view it yet.
I know you're going to give a lot of juice to the SDP on Wednesday, but can you save some for the CJ show on Thursday?
Yeah, it's kind of a weird spot to be in, isn't it? I mean, do I have to give them my B material? No, I'll never think like that. I'll give you the best I got every day, and some days it's going to be better than others.
Hey, man, look, I feel you always try to give your 110, so I don't ever have to worry about your effort. You are someone I could count on in a Game 7.
Thanks, buddy. I love that.
Of course. I still want to touch off on some more stuff from some of the other series that have happened. I know we did kind of go.
Yeah, we went long. I guess we'll have to be snappy here, or else Adam Wild's going to be firing people. Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry, but we spent a lot of time talking about his Toronto Maple Leafs. So if he gets mad at us, can you imagine if Adam Wild's like, how dare you talk too long about my favorite hockey team, the Toronto Maple Leafs, on this podcast? I mean, if he has that point, I think he has to get his priorities straight.
It's pretty nice that we're now 69 episodes into the best 30-minute hockey podcast in hockey that always consistently goes 60 or more.
Are you going to say it, or am I going to say it?
I already said it if you listen closely.
I see the vision. I see what you got going on. We all feel better with the confidence that comes from great grooming. Personal grooming is, personal. But whatever your personal style, waxing gives you an endless amount of choices so you can keep your skin looking smooth and healthy. European Wax Center They are the experts in waxing for everyone. They help you feel like your best inside and out. No matter what kind of wax you're looking for, their wax specialists have you covered. Whether you want your back, your shoulders, legs, your nose, even your eyebrows, you can get groomed by the experts at the European Wax Center. They offer personalized consultations so you can find the wax that works for you. When you first start a waxing routine, it can be a little intimidating, but the more you go, the more comfortable it is. The pros at the European Wax Center can help you start and stick to that routine. They are also committed to keeping you safe while they keep you smooth, with enhanced hygiene measures for an added level of confidence and care. With so many convenient locations, your local European Wax Center is always easy to get to. Their online booking system makes getting a reservation simple and straightforward. You can also use the EWC app to book your waxing service. European Wax Center. Well-groomed is wax-groomed. Ready to try it? European Wax Center is so confident you'll love your experience. Your very first wax is free on the house. Book your free wax today at waxcenter.com. Sounds like a good idea. This podcast is sponsored by HelloFresh. With HelloFresh, you get farm-fresh, pre-portioned ingredients and seasonal recipes delivered right to your doorstep. You can just skip all those trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. That is exactly why it is America's #1 meal kit. I'm not kidding about the cheaper stuff here. It is 72% cheaper than dining at a restaurant and is even cheaper than grocery shopping. That's money in your back pocket. Their newest menu release includes Mediterranean recipes that are filled with fresh fruits and veggies, nuts, olive oil, fiber-packed whole grains for nourishing balance. They have some really, really healthy stuff. And right now, if you go to HelloFresh.com/Johnston16, Johnston16, you can get up to 16 free meals and 3 free gifts. HelloFresh.com/Johnston16, and you can get 16 free meals and 3 free gifts. HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit. With spring in the air, it's a time of renewal and growth, personally and professionally. As your small business grows, LinkedIn Jobs is here to make it easier to find the people you want to talk to faster and for free. Create a free job post in minutes on LinkedIn Jobs to reach your network and beyond, the world's largest professional network of over 810 million people. Then add your job and the purple #hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring, so your network can help you find the right people to hire. Seems pretty simple. It's a lot of simple tools, to be honest with you, like screening questions, and they make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs, they help you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn. That is a lot of people looking for jobs. By the way, you can post your job for free at linkedin.com/Johnston. LinkedIn.com/Johnston to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. People, it's Julian here with a message from Athletic Greens. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient and daily nutrition, especially heading into the flu and cold season. It's not a fun time. In just one scoop in a cup of water every day, that's it. That's literally it. That's amazing. No need for a million different other pills and supplements and all that extra stuff. Athletic Greens is it. To make it easy, Athletic Greens will give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your very first purchase. All you have to do, visit athleticgreens.com/Johnston. It's CJ's last name. How easy, it doesn't get any easier than that. athleticgreens.com/Johnston to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. We kind of touched up on the Oilers, but there was another Hart Trophy candidate who really needed a playoff series win, who got the job done in a game 7, that goal, which made it 2-0 for the Oilers, where Connor McDavid basically willed himself to the net and celebrated a la Nail Yakupov. That is I've never seen that much joy from Connor McDavid in my life. Never.
Yeah, this is the yin and the yang. Remember, I've been attaching the Leafs and the Oilers as sort of cosmically linked the whole, the last few episodes. This is the yin and the yang. Like, the Oilers played not as good a team as the Leafs. They were right up against it, but they found a way to get through. And you just see the joy. Like, I get it. Like, that's what the Leafs fans need. That's what these Leafs players need. That's what management and ownership and everybody needs. You just want to be able to experience that joy. And I thought Connor McDavid, that might be one of the best playoff series, like, individual performances I can ever remember. Did he have 6 games, I think, with at least 2 points in them out of the 7?
That's insane.
Like, talk about beast mode. Like, we see it everywhere. Like, even like star players end up getting their points in the playoffs, but in a lot of individual games, they just get shut down. Like, the matchups are so tight. The other team is tight checking. You're not getting power plays typically, or sometimes they're at the normal rate. Like, all sorts of things are going on in the games that just keep the star guys from being able to break through like that. And the LA Kings just had no answer for them. I'm not sure the Calgary Flames will either. I mean, that's why I'm picking an Edmonton upset in round 2. I think this guy's giving us he's sending out the bat signal here that, like, this is the time. Like, everybody pay attention to what's happening in Edmonton, because number 97 might just be putting everybody on his back. And so, yeah, that was a special performance. A great seeing the way that the fans got to celebrate that game 7 victory and McDavid, and just what a release. Now, I'm not sure it matters. Like, as I said, they had to win that series, but if they go down easily in round 2, I don't think the narrative changes too much. But I think this is going to be a battle of Alberta to remember, and probably up here in Canada where we're recording the pod. Like, that'll probably be the series that generates the most juice, I would guess, just with it being 2 Canadian teams. I'm really fascinated to see the Lightning and Panthers go at it again. That was, for my money, probably the best individual series of last season's playoffs. And so I'd like to see another version of that. I don't think there's going to be a bad series on the slate here, but Calgary Edmonton is going to be epic, and having McDavid on this level, like, can he keep it up? It's going to be fascinating to watch.
Who has more to lose in a battle of Alberta, the Flames or the Oilers?
Oh man, can they tie for first? I mean, like, Calgary's in a different spot because they've just got all these uncertain contract situations. Johnny Gaudreau's a pending free agent. Matthew Tkachuk's an RFA, but only 1 year till he's UFA. They have to make a big decision there. There's just a lot that they're gonna. When this season ends, they're probably facing some changes to the core of their team just by where they're at in their cycle. I think in Edmonton, it's a little bit more existential, the questions that they're facing. Like, can this ever work? A little bit, along the lines of Toronto. Stop me if you've heard this before, but they both have so much to lose because it's right there. And, like, who knows what happens in round 3? Like, I assume Colorado's getting through, but if you look at it, Edmonton might have played the Avalanche as well or better than any team in hockey this year. And so while the Avalanche will probably be, assuming they get through, they'd probably be the favored team against either Alberta outfit that gets to the other side. Like, I don't know that they're going to be viewed as unbeatable in that series. Like, they're not going to be the as heavy of a favorite as you're seeing they are right now in the St. Louis series. And so, man, this is a dare to dream spring in both Edmonton and Calgary, now that you've got to this point. And so I think they both have a huge amount to lose and no guarantee that they'll be back here again next year. And so it's hard for me to say one over the other. If you force me to pick one, I'd say Calgary has more to lose just because their guys aren't signed and who knows how that'll play out. Edmonton still does have Draisaitl and McDavid and Nurse and all these guys. They'll still be on the team next year. So it's probably more to lose in Calgary, but it's whoever loses this series is going to, this is like this could be like 20 years when you're on your porch thinking back in your career going like, man, I wish that had played out differently.
Yeah, and I gotta say, I'm thinking of my my good buddy Salim Valji covering the Calgary Flames for TSN. That is the series to cover for the second round of playoffs, and by that effect, I'll think of Haley Salvian as well, covering the series for the.
Pierre LeBrun's heading out there too.
Well, of course, Pierre LeBrun has to be there. Could you? That's the series I would love to cover. Just fly out and pick any series. I mean, Battle of Florida, that would be like a very close second, but Battle of Alberta, like we could see we could see fireworks in that series.
That's a great on ice and off ice series. Like that, they'll be having lots of fun on the off nights. I guarantee you. I've been there before. It's pretty easy travel. You can drive between the cities if you want. Even if you want to fly, it's an hour flight. I mean, that's easy sledding, and it's going to be like lots of atmosphere in both places. Probably some animosity, tons of eyeballs on it. Like that's as good of a series as you get in your career, pretty much. Unless we ever get two Canadian teams in the Stanley Cup final. From a Canadian hockey writer's perspective, like that's about as good as it gets. And they're going to eat lots of steak and drink lots of nice wine and have lots of fun.
Yeah. And those games in the Battle of Alberta, those are not games you want to be doing any flora and fauna in the stands for. To take that shot. Anyway, mention the Battle of Florida. I would love if we got like anything that was like last year's series on top of like any other extra surprises, maybe a Kodak Black sighting or two in that series as well. But Battle of Florida, don't sleep on that. Obviously, these two teams don't like each other, and there's a good chance whoever wins that series could go to the Stanley Cup final and represent the Eastern Conference.
Kodak Black was at a game in the first round.
Yes, Florida. He was. Yes, he was. One of my good friends, Marc-André Perrault from TVA Sport.
Yeah, he showed me the photo too.
Yeah, got that little selfie with him.
Anyway. Yeah, so I don't know if it can live up to last year. I don't know what the Lightning have left. I also have some concerns about the Panthers. I mean, we talk about our CJ Show bet, but they didn't play to their best, in my opinion, in round one. You know, they got behind in a few of those games. I know that was a hallmark of theirs, coming back from the multi-goal deficits, but I'm not sure that's a winning strategy over time against the kind of teams they're going to be playing here to try to win a cup. So there's a lot of unknowns in this series. And I think with Braden Point situation being unclear, you know, I can't imagine he's going to play. Like, no one's telling me what his injury report is, but I was in the building. You see his right leg just crumple in a very unnatural way under him. Comes back, plays a 25-second shift to try to play at the start of the second, stays on the bench. Like the Lightning, it's hard not to admire that team, like how tight they are, the way they do that. Like, I know it might sound a little over the top, but like he wants to be in it with his guys. He's on there on the iPad right after a power play. I assume he's probably like trying to look for some things to suggest to them. You know, Steven Stamkos, remember the game he came and played in the Stanley Cup final against Dallas? He scored. He came back on the bench too, and he watched the rest of that game, even though he couldn't play. Like, those guys are in it together. And so I think it sets up as a compelling series. I have no idea really who's going to win it. I know I picked the Panthers, but I didn't say it with much conviction. It's more just trying to keep our bet in play. But if the Lightning can play into another round, like these guys are legends. Honestly, I as that series was going along against Toronto, I didn't think they had it in them. There's a lot of games they just didn't have a ton of jump. Vasilevsky wasn't at his best, all that sort of stuff, but they found a way. And so who knows? They could find their way. I mean, winning a three-peat in today's day and era would be like, there's almost no words for that. They're still a long way from there, still 12 wins, but you know, they're playing on. The champs won't go down.
That's true. And if Tampa closes this out and wins it, team of the salary cap era, undisputably team of the century to this point as well. Like, it's incredible what they've been able to do and what they've been able to play through. Just, I thought they were dead in the water too in the first round. I thought their tired legs would have just kind of held them up. They've surprised everyone.
Think about it. They lost in the Cup in 2015. They lost Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Final in 2016. Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Final 2018. Win the Cup 2020, 2021. And as you're saying, if they win in 2022, like there's no one can put their resume against that. Nobody. I think this is their 22nd playoff series under John Cooper in 10 years.
Holy crap.
So like, go look at guys like Palat and Kaloran, like guys that have been there, and look at how many career playoff games they've had. Like they're getting up there on like the biggest list among active players. And then, you know, Stamkos, he's missed games in the playoffs during that run with some injuries and stuff. But like, anyway, these guys are more than 100 playoff games in and still just being badasses. Like it's pretty impressive to watch.
Before I mention Rangers and Canes, we should shout out Sidney Crosby, who found a way to play in Game 7. There seemed to have been some conflicting reports about whether or not he was diagnosed with a concussion ahead of that Game 7 between the Penguins and the Rangers. But he turned back the clock and had a performance for the ages throughout that series. And I have to admit, it's a bit of a shame that we're not going to see him in the second round. And I know the hit he got from Jacob Trouba occurred last week, and we didn't really touch off on the hit itself and everything that kind of came out after that. So do you have any quick thoughts on that?
Yeah, awesome season for Crosby, awesome series for Crosby. One less chance for him to win the cup. You know, he's won 3, but you know, the great thing about great athletes is they stay greedy, they stay hungry. You'd like more. Yeah, I don't know what's going to go on in Pittsburgh. A big offseason with Evgeny Malkin and Chris Letang, both having their contracts expire. You know, new ownership group in place. You know, by no means am I suggesting Sidney Crosby's going anywhere, but like what it looks like around him could be quite different. And maybe that was his last best shot. I hope it's not the case, just because I think it's cool for the sport. But the salary cap is ruthless. Strips talents from teams over time and makes it more difficult to keep being competitive. But you know, it won't be because of his effort that the Penguins fell a little bit short in that series. And you know, I didn't like the hit from Trouba, honestly. Like, there's no point in relitigating a thing that wasn't suspended a week ago. But you know, Crosby beats him, and he's reacting because he's been beaten and that play. And so, you know, I wouldn't have minded seeing that penalized by player safety. I know they didn't view it that way. That's fine. But yeah, Sid's a legend. Ovi's a legend. But their time is getting a little dimmer, right? And who knows what, you know, we won't have time to get deep on the Capitals, but they had their end of season availability. It's like everybody's injured there too, right? Nicholas Backstrom has a hip issue they have to address. Tom Wilson's, you know, likely headed for knee surgery. Like it's so hard to stay competitive as everyone gets older, and we might be seeing the book turned here, the chapter turned on those guys in terms of being in the cup finals and being on the top teams and you know, ultimately being the most impactful players in the league, because there's a big group beneath them that have pushed through.
That is true. But if we get teams like New York and Carolina establishing themselves as the premier teams, just seeing the changing of the guard, I'm not mad at that. And look, Ovi and Crosby, the battles between those two, outstanding to see. You can say the figureheads have been replaced with McDavid and Matthews, even if they are in different conferences. The game is still, at least from an on-ice perspective, in terms of faces, even if you can make your qualms about marketing or whatever, still at least in good hands.
It's a circle of life in sport, man. It's this is what happens. This is what's supposed to happen. It's good for the league when new teams break through and you get excited fan bases there. And, you know, like this is how it's supposed to play out, especially with the way the cap's designed. We're not meant to have a team like the Canadians in the 70s or whatever. Like those days are gone. Although Tampa's trying to challenge that notion, but realistically, those days are gone.
I know we've run pretty long. Are you still up for a quick Ask CJ?
Really quick.
Yes.
I'm running out of coffee.
Yeah, me too. This is my one. I'll show the mug that I have, the Jesse Blake no mug. It's I'm running low on coffee too. Let's take this one from Insider J Money, aka the Chris Johnston unofficial fan club Twitter. Shout out to you, my man. Should the NHL adopt a conference final MVP award, much like the Major League Baseball League has, or the NBA has recently adopted? Should there be more awards in the playoffs?
No.
Okay. All right.
I mean, I don't have strong thoughts. I think awards, I don't know. I'm not feeling awards in general. Like, I think the Conn Smythe Trophy means something, and it's hard to develop those new awards to really mean something. I mean, I guess there's no harm in it. If I'm just being cranky to say no, like one more thing, who's going to vote on it? How's it going to work? But I don't think they need one. I'm not sure it's necessary. But if we're giving out a first round award, we're probably giving it to Jake Oettinger or McDavid. It's funny, but we might be giving it to a guy who lost. That's how good Ottinger's performance was. It probably goes to McDavid if there's a first round award, but I don't think we need one. If they had one, though, I wouldn't be too grumpy about it.
Yeah, for what it's worth, like I don't have a problem with the conference final award. Like I'm more curious about what they named. Like in the NBA, they named the conference finals awards after Magic Johnson and Larry Bird. That makes sense. They were dueling against each other as often as they did. In the NHL, what do? Like who's worthy enough of being named, having an award named after them for a conference? Like that is where you'd get into some really interesting debates. But we could treat that we could talk about that for another episode.
We don't have a Wayne Gretzky award in hockey. Like you have to think that'll happen at some point. I mean, that's an obvious one. Even Lemieux, Lemieux played in the East most of his career. Gretzky played in the West most of his year. I mean, maybe even though Lemieux and Gretzky didn't go head-to-head in playoff series, so it's not quite the same as Magic and Bird. Maybe that would make sense if you were going to do that.
So the thing is with the Gretzky Lemieux award is that I think it's kind of universal that a lot of people consider Gretzky to be better, even if there are people who would argue Lemieux to if he were healthy throughout his career, could surpass Gretzky. So I think people would see there's some kind of added value to Gretzky versus Lemieux if those two were named. Bird and Magic, they're very much on par with each other. They've been compared to each other all of their careers that they're equal enough. Like you'd have to get two players who I think are either have been compared with. Funny enough, you could probably, if they played in different conferences, you could get away with a Sid and an OV conference MVP award, or depending on how it goes, Matthews and McDavid.
All right. I don't know if I'll be around covering a league if by the time we're naming awards after those guys.
That is true. This one from Big AM34PP. Which Canadian treat could you not live without? The Nanaimo bar, all dressed chips, coffee crisp, or something else?
All dressed chips, hands down.
Yes.
I'm not a big chip guy, but when I'm a chip guy, all dressed every day, all day, take it to the bank. Ruffles preferably, but yeah, all dressed chips.
From Ryan Hindman, thoughts on the beauty that is Brady Tkachuk being the best brother ever? It's a reference to Brady Tkachuk throwing out T-shirts in support of his brother ahead of the Calgary Flames Game 7 against the Dallas Stars, also being in the crowd, watching his brother Matthew win Game 7 as well. He was very supportive.
I love it. There's nothing not to love about that. And it's the fact he's embracing it is a fun thing. I mean, Brady Tkachuk seems like just such a happy guy, but supporting his brother, it's something other players have done. I remember a few years ago that the Blackhawks, when they won their last cup in 2015, James Van Riemsdyk was like quietly on the ice there to support his brother Trevor when the families came out, for winning that cup. And at the time, James played for the Maple Leafs, but was still an active player in the league. I mean, this is something that does happen. I know the Shens have followed each other around when Braden won his cup with St. Louis and Luke won the two with Tampa, and there's undoubtedly many other examples. So I think it's great. The families understand what the sacrifice is for two family members to get there, and good for Brady for even wearing Flames t-shirts and the whole bit supporting Matthew.
Last one from Riley Swinehart. My university's president, who is a big runner, hosts regular morning running meetups with students or alumni throughout the year. Any thoughts from CJ on a run with Chris meetup, either in Toronto or on the road sometime?
I'd love it. As long as it's not too fast a crew, because I'm not running for speed as I am just for the daily habit and the exercise, but I'd totally be in for that. I don't do a lot of group runs or even runs with one other person, and most of my runs are solo. But I do find there's value to being with other people. It can be a nice distraction. Sometimes actually I find the pace goes up, and it's not even just a competitive thing. I just think there's something about being with other people. But as I mentioned, as long as you guys aren't looking to try to train to be faster on your next marathon, I'd do a group run anywhere, frankly. It'd be fun. Big Money CJ, that's going to do it for the Monday edition of the CJ Show. You have earned yourself a nap. It's going to be a lazy Monday. I'm not going to lie. That's okay. Call me Tuesday. Yeah. We will be calling you Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday and every other possible day after that. Siege, we'll be back on Thursday with Stick Taps. Also, added reaction to whatever nonsense goes down on the SDP or from Leafs locker clean out day or anything else that happens in between now and Jersey, of course. And subscribe to all the other podcasts on the SDPN. That includes the SDP. That includes Agent Provocateur. You can go back to the episodes of Noxie and Gax and check out the Jesse Blake Sports Report. For CJ, I'm Julian saying so long and peace. Adam, we're not sorry the episode lasted as long as it did.
The Chris Johnston Show.
Powered by Sports Interaction, Canada's sportsbook.
Inside the game, twice a week. Follow Chris on Twitter @ReporterChris. And follow Julian McKenzie @JK McKenzie.
The Chris Johnston Show.